This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Well, hello everybody, this is Hal.
And this is Melanie.
And we want to welcome you to another episode of Making Biblical Family Life Practical. Now in stereo.
Hal, I am so thankful to be able to talk again.
It's funny because the last episode you did solo.
And that was pretty much the last time I was able to do any broadcasting because, I got laryngitis.
You left everything on the field, dear.
It was awful.
Gave it your all.
Well, my mom had surgery, so I went to the hospital with her, and a nurse comes in, oh my word, sniffling and coughing every time she came in the room, which really annoyed me because there were posters everywhere about patients putting on masks if they felt sick and visitors putting on masks or staying away if they felt sick, but she was in there with no mask, sick as a dog. 2 days later, I'm sick as a dog and totally lost my voice. And listen, folks, that is really frustrating. Now, I was at Mama's house, so it wasn't quite like it would be at home dealing with kids.
I remember when we lived out in California and we had one child who was about a year and a half old and you lost your voice totally.
That was horrible, Hal.
That was a rough time for you.
Well, I finally ended up getting a whistle so I could get his attention from across the room. Because I was sick, too, so I couldn't chase him very easily.
Wow.
But, I couldn't even get his attention to wave, stop what you're doing,
Okay, but no little ones this time.
No little ones, but it was so lonely. Because I couldn't talk to Mom, couldn't talk to any of y'all, and I was away from y'all.
Yeah, I know. Hard. Some of the older kids would call and say, "Hey, can I talk to Mom?" And I'd have to say, "You can talk to Mom, but she can't talk to you." I remember you had
pretty horrible.
You had a conversation with one of our guys off at college, I think, and he was talking to you on the phone, and you were answering in a Skype chat.
Yes.
You kind of like the people that do the subtitles on CNN and the network news.
Yes.
Yeah, that was interesting. But you're better now.
I am better. It doesn't feel quite right. I'm feeling a little bit hoarse. But anyway, I'm able to talk, and what a relief it is.
Well, and let's give credit where it's due because God did an intervention on us. Last weekend we had this was number 6.
Our sixth come away weekend,
our marriage retreat and getaway. And going into that, you were like a Trappist monk. I mean, you had vow of silence or something.
I couldn't make a sound.
And we had friends praying, and you were looking at medical interventions of different sorts, and you finally did find something that you got your voice back for the 48 hours necessary to make it happen.
Oh, what a relief.
What a relief. And it was a blessing. And then you got home and fell silent again.
Well, for a few days anyway.
But you're better now.
I am better now.
Not all better, but better than you were.
That's right.
So here we are. Anyway, well, you might be hearing a little bit of background noise here, an occasional clank or something. And we thought that was kind of appropriate this time because we thought we might talk a little bit about chores, and that is the sound of our kids doing chores. We read somewhere, this has been a few years ago now, but we read somewhere that only 28% of American families have their children doing anything around the house, even taking out the trash or feeding the dog. Only 20, less than 1 out of 3 families. And they said that like 2/3 of American adults said, "Yeah, I did chores when I was a child," but only 1/3, less than 1/3, expected their own kids to do anything.
That's ridiculous.
Well, it's a luxury. It's a luxury when you have maybe if you're at home and you have 2 kids who are teenagers and they're pretty capable and they don't need a lot of hands-on attention or intervention or anything, maybe you could scoot by saying, well, like you had a friend who didn't teach her daughter how to cook because she didn't want anybody disrupting her kitchen. That was like her kingdom or something.
Well, and that was kind of disturbing because when I found this out, her daughter was like 19 and about to leave home with no clue how to cook whatsoever. And, that did not prepare her for life.
I don't think it did her any favors.
No. And it's frustrating to have your kids do chores sometimes because they don't do it like you might do it. They might make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's important for several reasons that you let your kids do chores. For one thing, they need to learn how to do those things before they're in a family trying to keep a house up themselves.
And this is something I remember we had if you know us, if you know a little bit about our family, we had 6 boys, one after another. And then we had 2 girls at the end. So we've got both here now. But when we started out, it was me and 6 boys against Mom, the only female, because the dog didn't count. And you had a friend who had all daughters, and she kind of took you to task because you were expecting boys to do women's
What she
work.
called women's work.
What she called women's work, exactly.
Well, but you know, when I said, Hal, do you think I'm doing wrong here? You pointed out that men do all kinds of those chores in Scripture. There are times that men are commanded to wash their clothes or to cook. And
there's passages that speak about men caring for babies.
yeah.
You know, and so it's not like that there is some gender divide that is biblically mandated or anything. I mean, there's very little that, especially in modern society. You know, in older days when there was a lot of brute strength just in the day-to-day existence, you know, cultivating your food and such, maybe there were things that would just have been unkind to expect your wife to do when you were the farmer. But, you know, now in modern society, there's not a whole lot that you have to look and say, that's just not appropriate for women to ever do that, or for men to ever do something. And
Right.
so, you know, my contention is, our guys are going to have to take care of themselves when they move out of the home. When they're going to have to wash their own laundry, they're going to have to cook their own meals, they're going to have to do their own shopping.
Well, with the average age of first marriage now approaching 30 for young men and 28 for young women.
Pause for gasp.
Yes, we have to assume our kids are going to have to do these things without the benefit of a mate for a while. And that may not always be true, but we've got to assume it's likely to be. And so to prepare them for adulthood is a really good reason to do chores. They need to learn that part of being in a community and a family is helping to keep that family going.
Right. Yeah, and that's a really important principle. And we'll open this up a little bit. But, you know, one thing that really gave us some impetus too, it wasn't just a matter of our poor mom being overwhelmed by all the guys, but it was also just the fact that you had some difficult pregnancies.
Yeah,
like
I did.
all of them. And
I had horrible bed rest pregnancies.
And you spent a lot of time on bed rest for the sake of the baby, and that meant that the older kids were going to have to learn to cook a little bit, or you're going to be eating a lot of sandwiches until Dad gets home from work. And so, you know, that was kind of an impetus too in our situation to say, hey, this is a life skill that's needed right now.
Well, you know, so one reason is to prepare them for adulthood, but another reason is it frees up the parents to do things only parents can do.
Right.
Because this is something I try to point out to our kids, that when they're in there doing the dishes, I'm in here recording a podcast.
Right.
You know, when they're in there doing the laundry, then I'm able to talk to a mom on the phone that needs my help, or I'm able to help a younger sibling with a reading issue, or, you know, lots of things that only I can do when everybody jumps in and does the things that any of us can do.
Well, and, you know, I work from home, and if one of the young people is cooking breakfast, then I can go ahead and start my work day at, you know, an hour earlier rather than me bustling about the kitchen. And so there's a lot of things that's something that they can contribute to the family.
Yeah.
That not only is good for the family, but it is good for them. It's good for them in the future, and it's good for them now.
Well, it's good for their character too, Hal. It's interesting, but one small study but it's longitudinal. It studied kids over 25 years.
Right.
Found that the best predictor for young adult success in their mid-20s was whether they participated in chores when they were very young.
Wow.
And I think because it teaches you diligence. It teaches you to work.
Yeah.
To contribute. And that's something that 20-somethings desperately need.
Wow. Yeah. Yes, it is. Okay. And so we are one of that 28% families. We have expected our kids to do chores, and we don't live out in the farm. We don't have a stable full of animals that have to be cleaned up after, or wheat that has to be threshed, or anything else. But
But there's still things they can do, and we're going to
yes.
talk about that practicalities.
Right.
At what ages can you expect kids to do different things in a minute?
Yes.
But I've got some more advantages of doing chores.
Please go ahead.
One thing is that it is good for their academics to do these hands-on tasks because things like sweeping
Yeah.
causes them to cross the midline. It's a midline exercise.
Okay. Meaning that you're moving. You're moving the focus of your body from right to left
and
across
your eyes.
and your eyes and your head and everything. And when you do that, you are changing your locus of control in your brain from left side to right side.
Right.
Correct?
And,
That's how
from
the
right to left, yeah,
well,
because it's opposite.
Well,
but
depending on where you started.
Yes.
Okay.
But that helps kids with academics.
Right.
It can improve learning glitches. It can improve dyslexia and things like that.
Well, that's because a lot of the learning difficulties that people come down with involve switching between the left and right halves of their brain, and if they're not really comfortable with that, if their brains don't do that automatically and rapidly, it can cause all kinds of issues with normal learning processes. Yeah.
And so chores often involve big movements.
Right.
Big back and forth movements like wiping a mirror.
Right.
Is a big movement. Wiping a counter is big movements. And those big movements are good for our developing brains. So that's another advantage of chores.
All right. That's good.
I think one other big advantage of chores is that when kids contribute, they feel ownership. And when kids get out of the wagon and start helping to pull it, they feel ownership in the wagon. And they feel like they're contributing, they're helping, it's part theirs. And I think that I think that's good for family unity. I think it's good for just an attitude of appreciation for what the Lord's given us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Investment is important.
Buy-in.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. You've got some skin in the game. Well, all of that is very true. And I think, talking about appreciation, I think that's one of the things that sometimes we miss out as the parents. Not that nobody appreciates all I do for them as their father. I don't mean it that way. I mean that we, the moms and the dads, don't fully appreciate what our kids are doing for us. That we look at. I'm reading a book by Tim Keller called Every Good Endeavor. He's talking about how the gospel influences everything that you do in your daily walk and career and work. It focuses on work. But one of the things he talks about is how different cultures and different worldviews and philosophies over the years have had very different viewpoints on work. Like for the ancient Greeks, work was something that was for slaves. That was for menials. That was not the elevated, the great humanistic mind game. If you're out doing just chores, that's why you have servants, for goodness sakes. And it was like this was beneath the philosopher to be doing routine tasks like that. And he points out that that's true in several different religious cultures, if you will. The idea that work is an interruption to the pure and the righteous work of the mind and the aesthetics and all the rest. But it's Christianity and Judaism before it that says, look, there is benefit in labor. There is honor in honorable work. Mm-hmm. That labor, whether you are a theologian or the assistant to the stable manager, you are doing work that needs to be done, and that is a service to your fellow man. And it is a good thing and can be done to glorify God. It's not a punishment.
Well, see, I think that service is an important thing, learning to care for others. Mm-hmm. Love is putting someone else's needs and desires more highly than your own.
Right.
And yet, you know what? 80% of middle and high school students and study involving 10,000 students, okay?
That's a lot.
80% said they valued their own happiness and achievement over caring for others.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that.
And yet, the scripture teaches us to lay down our life for our friends.
Yeah.
The scripture teaches us to value others more highly than ourselves, to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
And what does it say in Ephesians chapter 5? Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. That there's that service that you reach out to the one that you love and you lay down your life and serve the ones you love. And that starts at home.
And the Lord gave us the example when he washed the disciples' feet.
That's servant's work.
That's servant's work. It's humble work. And yet he made it plain that there was no shame in it. In fact, there was glory in it.
Well, and that's why when he came to Peter, and Peter said, Lord, no, don't do this, Lord, because I need to be washing your feet. And he says, no. The Lord basically told him, look, you need to be quiet and let me make a lesson out of this, that I'm serving you because you should be serving one another.
And so if you want to raise ethical children, if you want to raise giving and caring and responsible kids that give back, you need to give them chores.
Okay. And we're going to talk about some practical ideas about how to make this work in your home and some things that we've done that worked better than others and some that maybe didn't work so well for us. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. But while we're talking about family life and showing love for the ones closest to you, we've got a sponsor this month we really want to share with you. Let's go ahead and cut over to that, and we'll pick this up in just a moment, okay?
Be right back.
Hello, neighbor.
This Thanksgiving,
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Please won't you be my neighbor?
it only takes one person
We are trying to give the world positive ways of dealing with their feelings.
Yeah? Like what?
to inspire a world of kindness.
There are many things you can do.
Based on the true story of the friendship between Mr. Rogers and a cynical journalist.
You love broken people like me.
Sometimes we have to ask for help, and that's okay.
Starring Tom Hanks and Matthew Reese.
I think the best thing we can do is to let people know that each one of them is precious.
A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. In theaters November 22nd. For tickets and showtimes, go to resources.abeautifulday.movie.
Okay, so we're talking about chores.
And it's not a chore to talk about chores.
No, it's not. It's a good thing to talk about.
I feel like this is so important, and I really hope that families will get the vision. Yes, it's a pain in the neck to start it because your kids are going to complain and they're going to whine. But let me give you a little hint about doing chores with your kids. If you work with them, they'll love it because they crave time with you.
And I don't know all the demographics of our listeners, but I will say experience has shown me again and again, anything that you want to do to structure your family life, the sooner you can start it, the better the acceptance is going to be.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have a whole lot easier time if you got 5-year-olds and if you're trying to institute chores with a 5-year-old than if you're trying to institute chores with a 15-year-old.
Exactly. And so that's something, if you've got young kids, even if you have older kids already, the younger kids, you can start them off. I always go back to our cats. When we got married, you brought a cat into the family, and Sugar, bless her heart, did not like getting her nails trimmed. We had to take her to the vet for that. And we got a kitten after a couple of years, and I thought, there's no need we need to take him to the vet. I bet if I start off just clipping his nails right now, he might grow up accepting it. And he never gave me a bit of trouble. Never. This is a little male cat.
Yeah.
But it was because we started him very early, and he just grew up thinking, okay, that's what we do. This is what we do in our family, and I can live with that.
So if you got young children, start now.
Yes,
If
go
you
ahead.
got older children, sit down and persuade them. Talk about why it's important. Tell them that you're concerned that they're going to have to know how to do this stuff in their own house, in their own apartment one day. Give them the reasoning and convince them.
And you don't really even have to call it chores. Just like you say, hey, we're teaching you how to cook now.
Yes.
We're going to teach you how to do your own laundry.
And give them some direction over it. Like in our house, our kids rotate being chef of the day.
Yeah.
And so the chef of the day gets to decide what he makes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Within reason. If they want something that we don't normally have the stuff where they've got to tell whoever's shopping in advance so we can buy it.
Right.
We've got to be able to afford it. But they get to decide, and they like having that control.
Okay.
And so give them some control over their chores too. But let's talk about, okay, so to get them to do them, win them over, explain why, the whys and hows, give them some direction and control, work alongside them.
Yeah.
And inspect what they do. Don't just expect them to do it,
Honestly.
but check and make sure that they did it. Now, that's really hard
Yes.
for parents of many children.
Yep.
Because it's easy for somebody to fly under the radar. So let me give you a little hint I learned about that. We have chore times.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do chores before breakfast, before lunch, after lunch, before dinner, after dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has something they're supposed to be doing during that time. And that way, no matter how many children we had at home, it's easier now with just 3 at home.
Yeah.
No matter how many children we had at home, when we had 7 at home, or 8 when he was home for holidays, I could look around, and if somebody was goofing off, I could see, hey, it's chore time. What are you doing? And so chore time is a way to make sure everybody's working.
Okay.
But let's talk about what can be. Let's give you some vision for what the kind of chores you can assign at different ages.
You want to start at the oldest and go backwards? Because
okay.
because I think you can get little ones started on doing some kind of pre-chore activities, but it kind of makes more sense if you know what they're going into. When our kids leave the home, I want them to be able to cook for themselves, to do their own laundry. I want them to know the basics of taking care of their cars, or to do some basic household repairs. That's just adult functioning. But it doesn't happen on their 18th birthday, so you got to start earlier. How soon do you think you can teach somebody to cook?
Well, let's start even earlier than that, because the oldest kids, if they never had chores, are going to have to learn all these things. So
True.
Let's start. A preschooler
Okay.
can put away the silverware,
Yep.
can move the stuff from the washer to the dryer,
Yeah.
can pick up, although they might need help, like you might need to say, pick up 5 books, now pick
Yeah.
up 4 books, now pick up 3 books.
Right.
They might need you to work alongside them. They can fold the towels and washcloths.
Mm-hmm.
They can feed the dog and water the dog.
Okay. Yes.
Now, around 6 or 7, a child is old enough to start making like sandwiches, lunch, things like that.
Yeah.
Can make sandwiches for lunch, can learn how to run the washer and dryer,
Mm-hmm.
especially dryer, super easy.
Yeah.
Can sometimes be trusted to work in another room, picking things up.
Yeah.
Can empty the dishwasher,
Mm-hmm.
refill the dishwasher. A child can sweep,
Mm-hmm.
and child-sized brooms are available at any Montessori supply house.
Yep.
Child-sized brooms and mops are awesome,
Yes, they are.
and sweeping is great for young children.
Yeah. They can make their bed.
They can make their bed. They can fold clothes,
Mm-hmm.
at least simple stuff.
Yeah.
By 9 or so, this is going to blow some people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
There pretty much aren't any chores they can't do except maybe draining noodles, something carrying boiling water.
Yeah, that's the one thing we do draw a line on, the moving pots of boiling water around in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But I mean, even using knives
Oh,
safely.
yeah.
Now.
Just got to teach them how to use it safely.
Yeah.
And there are things that you can do. There's gauntlets you can buy so they can't cut themselves.
Right.
They can start out with plastic knives, cutting up vegetables and things.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you can do. But by 9, a kid can cook a meal. And our children have been pretty comfortable taking chef of the day, cooking 3 meals a day from about 9.
Yeah.
And now a 9-year-old is going to need somebody to step in. And so in our chore rotation, we have a chef of the day, and then we have a sous chef. And the sous chef helps the chef of the day and does the dishwasher.
Right.
Dishwasher is a big deal in our family.
Right.
And so we always make sure that the sous chef for the youngest one entering that rotation, the 9-year-old, is the oldest child on the rotation.
Yeah, they wrap back around, and so that
Yeah.
way
The oldest and the youngest are in the kitchen at the same time.
Yeah. You could still end up with a 10-year-old and 8-year-old being the team on a given day. But
Yes. Definitely by 11, and 9-year-olds can run the laundry completely,
yeah,
can vacuum, can sweep, can do all that stuff.
yeah.
An 11-year-old can run the lawnmower, can cook, can clean, can pretty much do anything. And
even even younger kids can handle some power tools, with some supervision. Like we've got a 10-year-old who loves to use the leaf blower.
Yeah.
That's
well,
not.
she's not going to hurt herself with
No,
leaf
it's
blower.
not dangerous. And so
Yeah, you got to judge safety.
exactly.
Now, an 11-year-old, though, is going to need a lot of supervision more than an 8-year-old or 9-year-old. Because 11-year-old is in hormone city, and they're forgetful, and they're addled, and they'll forget something you've taught them a million times. So be patient. Their brains are changing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? A 13-year-old should be able to run the house when you have the flu.
Yeah.
A 16-year-old should be able to go shopping without you. Get the entire list for the family.
So 16-year-old should be one of those magical new creatures.
16-year-olds
a
are
driver,
awesome.
A driver.
They should be able to take the kids to
yes.
an event and supervise them.
Right.
If you're sick or something.
Yep.
They should be able to run errands for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Basically, a 16-year-old should be a junior adult.
And you should
Be able
really
to do
be
just about anything an adult can do.
And that goes beyond just the household chore thing, to say, hey, our 16-year-old should be, halfway to independence, really, that we should be treating
Right.
them like a young adult. We should be training them with this idea that in a couple of years they need to be able to stand on their own feet. And we talk about this a lot in our book, No Longer Little.
Yes.
From the transitional years of middle school on forward, but
Yes.
we have other resources that we can point you to for the older kids.
Yeah. Well, our pre-flight, our
Yes.
webinar,
Right.
covers an awful lot of how to, it's about a pre-flight checklist. Let's make sure they're ready for adulthood.
Right.
And so that's probably the best resource for the older teens. Preteens and young teens is No Longer Little. And one of the things is, as you give them starting in the preteens, you need to be thinking about preparing them for independence. And so a preteen, say, what are you going to cook today?
Yeah.
I don't see any vegetables in that. Why do we have vegetables?
Uh-huh. Right.
It's important for for vitamins that we need. Let's look at, okay, that meal works and it's healthy and it has protein and starch and vegetables, but it's all brown. And that's not going to be very pretty on the plate.
Right.
And as you work through these things through chores, you're teaching them so much about life.
Okay.
And that goes for changing tires and changing oil.
Yep.
And all the little chores of life. Get your kids beside you and teach them how to do it. First, you do it with them watching and you talking them through it, just like we talked about with teaching adulting.
Right.
And then they do it with you beside them, talking them through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do it on their own.
And it's remarkable what young people can do, that I've seen our young guys that have taught themselves a lot of basic car maintenance tasks, replacing different things and
Even to fixing brakes and stuff.
right.
You know.
And some remarkable things around the house.
Well, I remember an 11-year-old, one of our 11-year-olds coming in and saying, Mom, do you mind if I get a little creative tonight? I said, what? And he said, well, I saw we had some portobello mushrooms in there. And I've just been thinking I'd like quiche. Do you mind if I make portobello mushroom quiche? And I said, well, I don't think we have any pre-made pie crust. He said, I know, but I kind of like to experiment with making a pie crust. I said, sure, go for it, honey. It was amazing.
It was delicious. And he's an awesome cook today.
And he was 11.
He was 11. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Let
they
him
will
stretch.
stun you with what they're able to do if you let them. And one of the other advantages of doing chores is it gives them confidence.
Right.
They've proven that they can do real adult things like adults do. They can feed the family. They can do laundry. They can really contribute and make a difference in our family life.
And they do. And our kids are just part of our team. We count on them.
We depend on them.
On a day-to-day basis. I mean, we were doing a lot of work today, and just to be able to assign that to these young adults and say, hey, I need you to go do this, you do that, take care of this, supervise your younger sister, whatever. it's great to be able to have your whole crew like that, and that comes from training them. And I can't say, that it's because we are the most organized, checklisty kind of people, because we are not.
We are not. No.
But
you know what? We need to talk for just a second about scheduling chores.
that's a great thing, because I know some people. I have a friend who is like hyper organized, and he's got checklists that look like the military put them together, and he follows up on his kids. I mean, that's the way they've lived. That's not our style.
No, I had to make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
We used to keep chores for a week, and then the kids begged us to change. Can we rotate every day?
Because if you've got one sibling who is really no good at keeping up with the dishes, by the end of the week there's nothing clean in the house,
Or is just busy or sick.
or yeah,
Then it's so bad by the time you change, the other person's drowned.
right.
Now, I know some people who keep the same chores for a year.
I've heard that.
Like one child will do all the laundry for a year. We've never done that because our kids like the variety. They like changing, and everybody loves to cook, so they like having an opportunity to cook. So we change every day.
Yeah.
And we have a set number of chores that we go through. And now Hal and I are having to take a place on the rotation because we don't have enough kids at home anymore.
Yeah, when you have 6 or 7 that you could assign all the tasks, that you could be really detailed.
Yes, but
It's become less detailed as kids have grown up.
And granted, there's not as much laundry to do, and there's not as many dishes to wash either.
Well, true.
But we rotate every day. We have basic chores like chef of the day, sous chef who does the dishwashing too, the laundry.
Yes.
Picking up and cleaning up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're home, which, we're on the road a lot, when we're home, we also do some weekly chores. I try to do an hour a day where we kind of keep up with all the rest of the stuff that isn't on the chore list.
Right. Yeah. And another thing too, we've talked about this in some other contexts, but there are some people who want to pay their children to do chores. And we thought about that and realized, if we paid our child for every basket of laundry that he folded, or every time that they cleaned off the dinner table, pretty soon they're going to expect, they're going to have a what's in it for me attitude about just serving in their family.
Yes.
And so we decided for daily chores, just for the upkeep of the house and stuff, we don't pay for that. If it's something that we might hire somebody else to do, like yard work, or an occasional project or something.
Well, generally we don't pay for yard work.
Right.
But we might.
Well, theoretically we could.
Yeah. Generally a big project.
Yeah.
We might pay for it, but generally we don't pay because nobody pays me to do chores.
No.
And our kids need to have the attitude that this is just part of giving back.
That this is how our family works. That we serve one another, and we're serving ourselves when we do these things. Everybody likes to have nice food to eat, and everybody likes to have clean clothes and all of that, and that comes from everybody working together and taking their turn with it. So that's the approach we've taken with that.
So anyway, folks, give your kids chores, and if you are doing chores, give them some extra responsibility. Mm-hmm. Challenge them a little bit. Give them more things to do. Give them more freedom, more opportunity, more independence, and see what they're capable of, because it may really surprise you.
Okay.
And who knows? You might get some portobello mushroom quiche.
Well, or some other blessing. That is terrific. Well, look, we appreciate you joining us, and it sounds like the dishes have been done because it got quiet in there. I hope that's what the indication is, but we do appreciate you joining us as we talk about some things about biblical family life and how to apply biblical principles in the 21st century American family household, or if you're listening somewhere else, in your own country. We do hope you'll join us again. And until the next time, I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Making Biblical Family Life Practical with Hal and Melanie Young. If you found this program interesting, challenging, and encouraging, why not join us on the web at halandmelanie.com. That's HALANDMELANIE.com. Or follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook/Hal and Melanie, or Facebook.com/Raising Real Men. This program is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Join us next week when we'll be back to talk about making biblical family life practical. Until then, thank you and God bless you for listening.